Admiral Ju Park stood at the viewport of the Hegemony flagship, watching the blue-green sphere of Earth rotate below. Her home. Once she had flown ships to protect it. Now she wore the silver-gray uniform of the Galactic Hegemony, the six-pointed star on her collar marking her as the highest-ranking human in their fleet. A position that meant nothing. A symbol. Nothing more. 50 years had passed since the Hegemony ships darkened Earth's skies. 50 years of humanity bowing to alien masters who saw them as little more than clever animals. The Hegemony stretched across thousands of stars, ruled by beings who considered humans barely worth noticing. "Admiral Park, your presence is requested in the command chamber," said a flat voice behind her. Domo, the Supreme Commander's aide, stood in the doorway. His pale skin stretched tight over a too large skull, black eyes unblinking. "I'll be there shortly," Park replied, keeping her voice neutral. Never let them see your true feelings. The first lesson of survival under Hegemony rule. In the gleaming command chamber, holographic displays showed star systems, ships, and resource tallies. Supreme Commander Vex lounged in his command seat, his scaled skin catching the light as he turned to look at Park. "Ah, the human representative arrives," he said, sharp teeth showing in what passed for a smile among his kind. "We have finalized plans for Earth. Your species has been most productive, but inefficient in its use of planetary resources." Park stood straighter. "Inefficient, Supreme Commander." "Indeed." Vex flicked a long finger, and a hologram of Earth appeared, covered in glowing grids. "Earth will be converted to a military processing center. Most civilian centers will be removed to make way for manufacturing complexes. Very efficient." "And the people?" Park asked, her heart pounding even as she kept her face impassive. "Relocated to labor colonies in the outer system. Those with useful skills will serve in appropriate facilities." Vex waved a hand dismissively. "Your species reproduces quickly. Numbers will recover. Billions displaced, families torn apart. Earth transformed into a factory world." Park nodded as if considering this reasonable, while inside her mind raced. "I am honored to be informed of this decision," she said carefully. "When will the process begin?" 90 standard days. Preparations are already underway." Vex turned to other matters, Park's presence already forgotten. That night, in her private quarters, one of the few privileges of her rank, Park activated a small device hidden in her wall panel. It looked like a standard entertainment unit, but when she entered a specific sequence, it created a bubble of white noise that blocked all Hegemony surveillance. Nightfall to Sunbird, she whispered to the secure communicator hidden inside. "The storm is coming. 90 days. A voice crackled back, distorted to prevent identification. Sunbird confirms. Is the timing confirmed? Directly from Vex. They're going to strip Earth and relocate the population. A pause. This changes the timeline. Moonrise project must be accelerated." Park closed her eyes briefly. "Is it ready?" "It will be." Sunbird out. Over the next weeks, Park moved carefully. During fleet inspections, she noted the Hegemony's weak points, their over-reliance on quantum communications, their fixed patrol patterns, their arrogance. She filed this information in her memory, occasionally passing coded messages to her network of human operatives scattered throughout the Empire. These operatives included dock workers, service personnel, and even some who had earned limited trust as technical specialists. Humans who appeared broken and subservient while secretly working toward freedom. One such person was Han Jisu, a maintenance engineer on a Hegemony supply station. When Park's ship docked for routine resupply, Han arrived to perform standard checks on the environmental systems. "Systems are functioning within parameters, Admiral," Han said loudly as they walked through a maintenance corridor. Quietly, she added, "The shipments you requested have reached the belt. Assembly is proceeding ahead of schedule." Park gave a slight nod. "Ensure the air filtration is properly calibrated. We wouldn't want any surprises." "Understood, Admiral." Later that cycle, Park was summoned to observe military exercises near Mars. The hegemony was testing new weapons platforms, using the red planet's moons for target practice. As explosions bloomed across Phobos, Vex turned to her. "Impressive, is it not? Your species never developed such firepower." Park nodded. "We had only begun our journey to the stars when you arrived. And yet you resisted for nearly a year. Unusual determination." Vex studied her. "Do you ever think about those battles, Admiral?" "I remember them as necessary lessons," Park said carefully. "They showed us our place in the galaxy." Vex seemed satisfied with this answer. "Your species learns quickly. That is why you are useful." As the weeks passed, Park received more coded updates. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden from hegemony sensors by technology they had never bothered to look for, humanity's secret shipyards worked day and night. Ships unlike any the hegemony had seen were taking shape. Vessels built with principles the alien scientists had dismissed as theoretical. 50 days before the scheduled repurposing of Earth, Park requested permission to visit her homeworld one last time. "Sentiment?" Vex asked, amused. "Protocol," Park replied. "As human representative, I should prepare the planetary leadership for the transition." Her request was granted. On Earth, in a secure room beneath the old Sul Command Center, Park met with the resistance leaders. Maps covered the walls, timelines, and resource allocations carefully tracked. "We're not ready," said General Kim, his face lined with worry. "We need at least another 60 days. "We don't have 60 days, Park replied. "How many ships are combat ready?" 70% of the planned fleet, said Commander Lee, pulling up holographic displays of sleek vessels hidden among the asteroids. "But the shield technology is still experimental. It will have to be enough," Park said firmly. "The hegemony is vulnerable at these points." She highlighted critical communications nodes and supply lines. "Their arrogance is their weakness. They don't believe we can threaten them." As she prepared to return to the hegemony fleet, Park looked out at the night sky above what had once been her home city. Stars shone down, many of them worlds under the hegemony's control. For 50 years, humanity had bent the knee. Now, the time for standing had come. "We will either free Earth," she told her comrades, "or we will die trying." Park returned to her post, counting down the days until humanity's hidden fleet would strike back, leaving the Galactic Empire in shock. Commander Tahoe Kim moved through the crowded gaming hall, nodding to the young men and women hunched over their simulation consoles. To any hegemony observer, this was just another human entertainment center, a place where humans wasted time playing childish war games. The aliens allowed such diversions. Happy slaves worked harder. But these were no ordinary games. Kim paused behind a young woman with short black hair, watching as she maneuvered a virtual ship through an asteroid field while evading enemy fire. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, her eyes never leaving the screen. "Good reaction time, Lieutenant Mina," Kim said quietly. "But remember to use the field's gravity wells to your advantage." She nodded without looking up. "Yes, Commander." No one in this room was simply playing games. They were training, preparing for a war the hegemony didn't know was coming. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, hidden in the hollowed-out core of a massive rock designated only as KB 720, Kim's real command center hummed with activity. Here, far from prying eyes, humans worked on actual ships rather than simulations. "Status report," Kim said it as he entered the cavernous space carved from the asteroid's interior. Chief Engineer Hyun looked up from her workstation. "Quantum displacement drives are testing at 97% efficiency on the flagship and first squadron. Shield harmonics are stable." Kim nodded approvingly. The quantum drives were humanity's secret weapon. Technology that could move ships through space in ways the hegemony had never imagined. Their scientists had explored similar principles decades ago, but abandoned them as impractical. Human desperation had made the impossible possible. "And the sensors?" Kim asked. "The blind spot is holding," replied Chunno, the head of electronic countermeasures. "Every maintenance cycle, our technicians adjust the hegemony sensor network just a little more. They're completely blind to this sector now." This had been perhaps their greatest achievement, subtly modifying the aliens' own monitoring systems over the years. Tiny changes, made by humans working as technical support throughout the hegemony fleet. Changes too small to notice individually, but collectively creating a massive blind spot that hid humanity's secret armada. Kim walked along the observation deck that overlooked the main construction bay. Below, dozens of sleek warships waited in neat rows. Not the bulky, overwhelming dreadnoughts the hegemony favored, but swift, elegant vessels designed to strike fast and move faster. Their hulls gleamed with a special coating that absorbed rather than reflected scanning beams. "Beautiful, aren't they?" said a voice beside him. Kim turned to find Commander Young-soo, his second in command. "Deadly beautiful," Kim agreed. "How are the crews progressing?" "The simulation scores improve every day. The pilots can operate the ships, but real combat." Young-soo shrugged. "That's always different. They'll need to learn quickly." Kim's communicator beeped with an incoming message. The small screen displayed a simple text. 30 days. Kim's face tightened. "Admiral Park says our timeline has been accelerated. The hegemony plans to repurpose Earth in 30 days. Young-soo paled. "We're not ready. We have to be." Kim turned back to the ships below. "Begin final preparations. All leave is canceled. Round-the-clock training simulations." The next weeks passed in a blur of activity. Test flights conducted in the shadow of distant asteroids. Combat drills run with real weapons at minimal power. And always the fear of discovery. A single hegemony scout ship passing too close. A communication intercepted. A spy in their midst. On the 25th day, a ship arrived carrying new recruits and essential supplies. Among the arrivals was Dr. Jinwoo, Earth's foremost expert on quantum physics. Kim met him in a secure conference room. "You've done remarkable work," Jinwoo said, examining the schematics of the fleet's propulsion systems. "But there's a flaw in the shield modulation. If the hegemony weapons hit at precisely the right frequency, they could cause a cascade failure." Kim frowned. "Can it be fixed?" "With 5 days. Maybe." Jinwoo began making notations on the schematics. "I'll need your best engineers." While the engineers worked to strengthen the shields, Kim focused on training his pilots. The simulation center now ran day and night, with crews rotating through in shifts. "You're still thinking like hegemony pilots," Kim told them during a briefing. "They rely on overwhelming firepower and numbers. We can't fight that way. We need to be smarter, faster, more creative." He brought up tactical displays showing hegemony fleet formations. They always follow the same patterns, the same protocols. Their arrogance makes them predictable. 4 days before the planned attack, Admiral Park's final transmission arrived. "Dawn breaks tomorrow." They were out of time. Kim ordered all ships to final readiness. Crews boarded vessels they had trained to fly, but many had never actually piloted. Engineers made last-minute adjustments to systems. Weapons were armed. The quantum drives hummed to life. In his quarters, Kim changed from his civilian clothes into a uniform no human had worn openly for 50 years, the blue and silver of Earth's defense force. He looked at himself in the mirror, at the commander's insignia he had kept hidden for so long. To the hegemony, Taho Kim was a collaborator who had helped identify and suppress human resistance. In reality, he had been protecting the resistance all along, directing the aliens' attention away from the real threat growing in the asteroid belt. On the bridge of the flagship, designated simply Hope, Kim took his place in the command chair. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with tense efficiency. Many were young, too young to remember an Earth without alien overlords. They had trained in simulators, but had never faced real combat. "All ships report ready," Commander said Young-soo. "Very good." Kim opened a channel to the fleet. "This is Commander Kim. For 50 years, Humanity has endured hegemony rule. We have bent, but not broken. We have waited and prepared, and today we show the galaxy that humans will not be slaves. He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew. Many of you have never known a free Earth. After today, that changes. Trust your training. Trust each other. Remember, the hegemony does not expect us. They do not believe we can fight back. Their arrogance will be their downfall. Kim closed the channel and nodded to his communications officer. Send the recognition signal to Admiral Park. Tell her dawn is breaking. Throughout the asteroid belt, engines flared to life as hundreds of warships rose from their hiding places. Quantum displacement drives engage, creating ripples in space-time that confounded standard sensors. In perfect formation, humanity's hidden armada emerged, a force that should not exist, built by a species thought tamed. As the fleet assembled, Kim received confirmation that Admiral Park had received their signal. She was in position aboard the Hegemony flagship, ready to play her part when the attack began. Kim gave the order that would change the course of human history. All ships set course for Proxima Centauri. The fight for freedom begins now. The ships vanished in flashes of blue light, leaving the asteroid belt empty once more, racing toward a battle that would leave the Galactic Empire in shock. The human fleet dropped out of quantum displacement around Proxima Centauri with perfect synchronization. One moment, the space near the red dwarf star held only the usual hegemony patrol vessels. The next, over 200 Earth ships appeared in attack formation. At the center of Proxima's second planet orbited the massive hegemony communications hub, a sprawling space station that controlled all official transmissions across this sector of the Empire. Without it, hegemony forces couldn't coordinate their responses. Captain Mina Lee's hands tightened on the controls of her fighter as she led Alpha Squadron toward the station. The plan called for small, fast ships to draw fire, while larger vessels moved into position. Her heart pounded, but her voice remained steady as she addressed her pilots. Remember your training. Stay in formation. Don't try to outgun them. Just keep moving. Ahead, the hegemony patrol ships were already scrambling. Alarms blared across their communication channels, confusion giving way to disbelief. Unidentified vessels. This is Hegemony Defense Force. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourselves immediately or be destroyed. From the flagship Hope, Commander Kim sent the human response. Silence. Let the hegemony wonder, even for a few critical minutes, who dared to challenge them. Mina's squadron accelerated toward the nearest hegemony cruiser. The alien vessel was 5 times their size, bristling with weapon ports that now swiveled to target the approaching fighters. Evasive pattern Delta, Mina ordered. Her 12 ships broke formation, spiraling around each other in a complex dance that made them difficult to target. The hegemony cruiser opened fire. Brilliant energy beams cut through space, but the human fighters were too quick, too unpredictable. When a shot did connect with Mina's wing, her shields flared blue, absorbing the energy rather than deflecting it. Shields holding at 92%, reported her systems officer. This was the moment of truth. Would their revolutionary shield technology work against actual hegemony weapons? The aliens' energy weapons operated on principles that should have torn through any conventional defense. But human scientists had discovered something the hegemony had overlooked: the ability to convert that energy and disperse it harmlessly. On the bridge of the Hope, Kim watched tactical displays as the battle unfolded. Alpha Squadron was drawing fire exactly as planned, while Beta and Gamma Squadrons moved into position behind the hegemony's defensive line. All ships report shields functioning as expected, Commander Young-Soo reported. The hegemony weapons aren't penetrating. Kim nodded grimly. Begin Phase 2. Across the human fleet, communications officers activated specialized transmitters. Suddenly, every hegemony channel was flooded with carefully prepared messages, not just in the hegemony language, but in the tongues of every subjugated species serving on their ships. The messages showed evidence of hegemony atrocities, proof of how the Empire had systematically exploited dozens of species. It revealed how the hegemony had deliberately kept advanced technologies from subject races, how they had manipulated conflicts to maintain control. Most importantly, it showed that resistance was possible. The humans, the supposedly primitive newcomers to galactic society, had found weaknesses in the seemingly invincible Empire. On the main hegemony battlecruiser, a reptilian communications officer named Kresh stared at his screen in shock. The images confirmed what many of his people had suspected for generations, that the hegemony had been responsible for the environmental disaster that had forced his species to surrender centuries ago. With a quick glance to confirm his superior wasn't watching, Kresh rerouted the human transmission to the crew quarters where most of his kind were stationed. Similar acts of quiet rebellion occurred throughout the hegemony fleet as the human psychological warfare found fertile ground among crews already harboring doubts about their masters. Meanwhile, Mina's squadron continued its deadly dance around the hegemony cruiser. They weren't trying to destroy it, just keep its attention fixed on them, while Beta Squadron slipped behind to target the communications hub's defensive grid. All fighters prepare for attack run Omega, Mina ordered. Her pilots acknowledged, forming up into 3 tight groups. The hegemony cruiser commander had finally realized these weren't random attack patterns. The humans were herding his ship away from the communications hub. He ordered a course correction, but it was too late. Beta Squadron was already in position. Their specialized electronic warfare ships activated targeted energy pulses that overwhelmed the hub's sensor arrays, temporarily blinding it. On the hub itself, hegemony officers rushed to battle stations. The facility had never been attacked, had never needed to defend itself. Its weapons were largely ceremonial, its shields designed to withstand radiation and meteoroids, not military assault. Target the power regulation nodes, Commander Kim ordered from the Hope. Remember, minimal casualties. We want to disable, not destroy. Gamma Squadron launched precision strikes against the hub's external power regulators. One by one, the massive arrays exploded in silent flashes, cutting power to defensive systems and communications equipment. In the chaos, something unexpected happened. A hegemony light cruiser suddenly turned its weapons on another hegemony vessel. Then another alien ship powered down its weapons completely. Commander, Young-Su said with surprise, "We're receiving transmissions from 3 hegemony vessels. They're offering to surrender." Kim hadn't expected defections this early. Accept their surrender. Direct them to holding position Alpha. The battle for the communications hub lasted just 22 minutes. When it ended, the largest hegemony communications facility in this sector was completely disabled, with minimal loss of life on either side. The handful of hegemony ships that had continued fighting were disabled or destroyed. As cleanup operations began, Kim received an encrypted message from Admiral Park aboard the hegemony flagship near Earth. First strike successful. Hegemony High Command in disarray. Supreme Commander Vex has ordered all available forces to Proxima Centauri. Earth defenses significantly reduced. Proceeding with Phase 3. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The hegemony, thinking this was a simple raid on a communications facility, would concentrate their forces here, away from Earth. They had no idea that the humans' real target was their homeworld itself. In the aftermath of the battle, Mina brought her fighter alongside a hegemony vessel that had surrendered. Through the viewport, she could see the alien crew watching her approach. They weren't the high-ranking hegemony elite, but ordinary soldiers from conquered worlds, forced to serve their overlords. One of them, a tall blue-skinned being, raised its hand in what appeared to be a salute. Mina returned the gesture. This was what the human leaders had hoped for, but couldn't count on. That other subjugated species would see humanity's resistance as a chance for their own freedom. As the human fleet regrouped, preparing for the next phase of their plan, Commander Kim addressed his officers. The first battle is won, but the war has just begun. The hegemony will respond with everything they have. They cannot afford to let any species successfully rebel. What the hegemony didn't know was that humanity had no intention of fighting a prolonged war. Their plan didn't require them to defeat the entire hegemony fleet, just to strike at its heart and change the galactic balance of power forever. The first strike had succeeded beyond their expectations. The hegemony was already in shock, and they hadn't seen anything yet. Supreme Commander Vex paced the command deck of his flagship, the Dominion, his scaled tail lashing behind him. The massive view screen showed the wreckage around Proxima Centauri's communications hub. 50 years of unchallenged rule had not prepared him for this. How did this happen? He snarled at his officers. How did humans, build warships under our watch? No one dared answer. The evidence was clear and humiliating. The supposedly primitive humans had not only created a fleet of advanced warships, but had defeated a hegemony installation with minimal losses. The humans must be punished, Vex decided. Gather the 7th Fleet. We will crush this rebellion before it spreads. But it was already too late. Despite the hegemony's efforts to control all communication channels, news of the human victory was racing across the galaxy. In the information void created by the disabled hub, rumors spread even faster than facts. On the mining world of Taraxis IV, workers from 7 different species heard that the humans had destroyed not 1 but 5 hegemony battlecruisers. On the agricultural planet Neos, the story claimed humans had developed weapons that could bypass any hegemony shield. By the time Vex's orders reached the 7th Fleet, colonies on the Empire's outer rim were already in open revolt. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Dominion beside Vex, her face carefully blank, as she watched him issue commands. No one suspected that she had helped orchestrate this chaos. No one knew that the emergency orders being transmitted carried hidden code that human technicians throughout the fleet would recognize. The 7th Fleet will depart immediately for the Sol system, Vex announced. We will crush the human homeworld and make an example of them. Park bowed her head. A wise decision, Supreme Commander. As the massive hegemony armada gathered, Park sent a coded message to Earth. The hammer falls. Prepare the anvil. The hegemony fleet was truly impressive. 200 capital ships and over 1,000 support vessels. It was meant to overwhelm the humans with sheer firepower, to obliterate any resistance before it could spread. 3 days into their journey toward Sol, the fleet encountered what appeared to be a small asteroid field. Sensors showed nothing unusual, and the ships adjusted course to pass through safely. That's when the quantum mines activated. These weren't conventional explosives. Each mine contained a miniature quantum displacement drive, calibrated to create localized distortions in spacetime. As the hegemony ships passed, the mines detonated in sequence. Ships that had been flying in perfect formation suddenly found themselves hundreds of kilometers from their expected positions. Navigation systems failed as sensors could no longer determine relative locations. Communication became impossible as transmission frequencies shifted unpredictably. The perfectly organized armada dissolved into chaos. On a small monitoring post at the edge of the Sol system, Commander Jai Song watched the sensor readings with grim satisfaction. The quantum minefield is working, she reported to Earth Defense Command. The hegemony fleet is scattered across half a light year. Meanwhile, humanity's allies were making their move. The Voltorians were unlike any species in known space. They communicated through color changes in their translucent bodies and had evolved on a world of constant mist. Their natural ability to blend with their surroundings had led them to develop the most advanced stealth technology in the galaxy. For centuries, they had watched the hegemony's expansion with concern, but had remained neutral, protected by their remote location and their ability to hide entire planets from sensors. 6 months earlier, a human diplomatic mission had secretly contacted them, proposing an alliance against their common potential enemy. The Voltorians had been skeptical until human scientists shared their quantum displacement drive technology, proof that humans could be valuable allies. Now, as the hegemony struggled with rebellions across multiple sectors, a joint human-Veltorian task force approached the Empire's governmental center on Nexus Prime. The Veltorian ship Whisper carried a small human strike team led by Commander Subin Kang. Their vessel was completely invisible to hegemony sensors, cloaked by technology that bent light and other forms of radiation around its hull. "We are approaching the capital defenses," the Veltorian captain communicated through the translator device. His body flashed patterns of blue and green that the humans now recognized as tension and determination. Kang nodded to his team. "Remember the mission parameters. We need to capture, not kill, the Hegemony Council members." The plan was audacious. While the main Hegemony fleet was scattered and disoriented near Sol, this small team would infiltrate the heart of the Empire's government and take control. On planets throughout the galaxy, the carefully planted seeds of rebellion were blooming. The Draxians, whose world had been stripped of resources, disabled the Hegemony mining operations. The Terran Collective, whose members served as technicians throughout the Empire, introduced subtle errors into critical systems. The Hegemony's rigid command structure, designed to maintain control over subject species, now worked against them. Without clear orders from above, local commanders refused to make decisions. With communication hubs disabled or unreliable, information moved slowly. By the time approval for action came from higher authorities, the situation had already changed. Back in the Sol system, Supreme Commander Vex had managed to regroup a portion of his scattered fleet. "Resume course to Earth immediately," he ordered, his voice tight with fury. But as his reduced force approached Earth, they found not a defenseless planet, but a well-prepared battlefield. The human fleet that had struck Proxima Centauri was nowhere to be seen, but Earth itself was surrounded by defensive platforms that hadn't existed days before. And there was something else, ships of unfamiliar design that moved with impossible grace. "Veltorian vessels detected," reported a sensor officer, disbelief in her voice. Vex hissed in shock. "The Veltorians have allied with humans." This changed everything. The Hegemony had always assumed the Veltorians were watching from afar, uninvolved in galactic politics. Their technology was rumored to be extraordinary, particularly in fields the Hegemony had never mastered. As Vex struggled to develop a new strategy, Admiral Park made her move. She had been waiting for this moment for decades. "Supreme Commander," she said formally, "you have been recalled to Nexus Prime immediately. The Governing Council requires your presence." Vex turned to her, suspicious. "What are you talking about? I've received no such orders." Park's hand moved to her side, where she'd concealed a small Veltorian device. "The situation has changed. The Hegemony must adapt, or it will fall." At that moment, across every communication channel in the fleet, images appeared of the Hegemony Council chambers on Nexus Prime. The council members were seated at their table as usual, but standing behind them were human and Veltorian soldiers. Commander Kang's voice rang out clearly. "Attention all Hegemony forces. The central government is now under joint human-Veltorian protection. All hostilities against Earth and other rebellious worlds are to cease immediately." Vex stared at the screen, then at Park, comprehension finally dawning. "You, all this time?" Park nodded once. 50 years is a long time to plan. Supreme Commander, humans are very patient when we need to be." The empire that had stood for 1,000 years was fracturing before their eyes, not through destruction, but through a carefully orchestrated series of strikes that targeted its weakest points, its arrogance, its rigid hierarchy, and its underestimation of those it had conquered. Admiral Ju Park stepped onto the gleaming floor of the Hegemony Council chamber on Nexus Prime. After 50 years of serving as a token human in the alien empire, she now entered not as a servant, but as a conqueror. Behind her came Commander Kang and a mixed team of human and Veltorian soldiers. The council chamber, with its soaring crystal ceiling and ornate walls, was designed to impress and intimidate visitors. The 12 council members sat at their raised table, their expressions ranging from fury to fear. Behind them stood Commander Kim and Veltorian guards, weapons ready but not aimed. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded High Counselor Mevix, the oldest and most powerful of the hegemony leaders. "You will all be executed for this treason." Park walked calmly to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She wore the full admiral's uniform of Earth's Defense Force, not the hegemony silver gray she had worn for decades. "The time for threats has passed, Counselor," she said simply. Her voice was steady, betraying none of the emotions churning inside her: the anger at 50 years of humiliation, the grief for those who had died under hegemony rule, the pride in what humanity had accomplished. The chamber doors opened again, and Supreme Commander Vex was escorted in, his wrists bound. He had been captured aboard his flagship when the human Volturian forces took control of the fleet. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by cold fury. "You planned this all along," he said to Park. "All these years, pretending loyalty." "I was loyal," Park replied, "to humanity, just as you were loyal to the hegemony. We each served our people as best we could." Park looked around the room, taking in the council members, Vex, the guards, and the recording devices that were broadcasting this moment across the galaxy. What happened next would shape the future for thousands of worlds. Many human leaders had argued for executing the hegemony leadership, for making them pay for decades of oppression. There had been debates about dismantling the empire completely, about human rule replacing hegemony control. But Park had fought for a different path. "Today marks the end of the hegemony as it has existed for the past 1,000 years, she announced. "But it does not have to mark the beginning of a new era of vengeance and bloodshed." She gestured, and one of her officers brought forward a holographic projector. Above it appeared the image of a new kind of council chamber, circular, with seats of equal height arranged around the perimeter. "I propose something the hegemony never considered: a true galactic council, where all species have equal representation and equal voice. Not rule by the strongest, but governance by consensus." Murmurs broke out among the council members. Vex laughed bitterly. "And you believe your conquests give you the right to dictate this new order?" he asked. Park turned to him. "No, our victory gives us the opportunity to break the cycle of conquest. The hegemony rose by subjugating others. It would be easy for humanity to do the same now." She stepped closer to Vex, her voice softer but still carrying to every corner of the room. "But that is not who we choose to be. Even after 50 years of occupation, even after watching our world stripped of resources and our people treated as lesser beings, we choose a different path. Not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to imagine something better." For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Vex's eyes. High Counselor Mevix spoke up. "And what happens to the current council in this new arrangement?" "You will stand trial for specific crimes against subject worlds," Park replied honestly. "But your species will have representation in the new council, equal to all others. The hegemony's knowledge and experience are valuable. It's the system of dominance that must end." The proposal sparked fierce debate. Some council members rejected it outright, clinging to their belief in hegemony superiority. Others, seeing the practical reality of their situation, began to negotiate for terms. Throughout the long discussions, Park remained firm on the core principles: equal representation, protection for all member worlds, shared technology, and fair trials for those who had committed atrocities. 3 days later, the Provisional Galactic Council was formed. The news spread across the stars, reaching worlds that had lived under hegemony rule for centuries. On some planets, there were celebrations. On others, skepticism. But everywhere, there was hope, something many species had abandoned long ago. 6 months later, Admiral Park stood on a specially built platform in what had once been Seoul, Earth's capital. Before her stretched a sea of faces, not just humans, but representatives from 47 species that had joined the new alliance. The platform had been built from the metal of scrapped hegemony warships. Behind her rose the new council hall, its architecture combining elements from all member species, a physical symbol of the new philosophy of governance. As the delegates took their places for the first official council session, Park found herself standing next to a familiar figure. Former Supreme Commander Vex, now simply the representative of his people. "I still don't understand," he said quietly. "You had us at your mercy. You could have taken everything." Park looked out at the gathering of beings from across the galaxy, some with scales, some with tentacles, some with wings, all now equals. "Taking everything leaves others with nothing to lose," she replied. "And those with nothing to lose eventually become dangerous. What we wanted wasn't to rule, but to live free, and for others to live free as well." Vex considered this an interesting philosophy. "We shall see if it survives contact with reality." "It already has," Park said with a small smile. "After all, you're still here." As the session began, Park took her place as Earth's representative, not above the others, but among them. She thought of the long journey that had brought humanity to this point, from conquest to resistance, from secret plans to open rebellion, from victory to the harder task of building peace. The hegemony had conquered through superior force. Humanity had won through a combination of ingenuity, adaptability, patience, and unexpected mercy. They had fought not just for their own freedom, but for a vision of a galaxy where freedom was the birthright of all. As the new council leader called the first session to order, Park looked around at the faces of former enemies and new allies. Some still harbored doubts, others embraced the new way wholeheartedly. All were taking a chance on something unprecedented, a true partnership of worlds. The stars had once seemed to hold only threats for humanity. Now they offered promise. Not the promise of dominion, but of discovery. Not conquest, but connection. For Admiral Juu Park, who had lived half her life under alien rule and half working to end it, the sight of this diverse gathering was victory enough. The fight was over. The real work, the work of building something lasting, was just beginning. The end.